May 21, 1953. A bus with its windows completely blacked out crosses the Arizona desert. Inside, 40 military specialists are traveling without knowing exactly where they are being taken. They are engineers, physicists, and highly skilled technicians. Among them is a decorated World War II veteran named Arthur Stansel. When the bus doors finally open, what they see will leave them scarred forever. A metallic object, 30 feet in diameter, embedded in the desert sand. And through an open hatch, bodies that were definitely not human. What happened that day remained buried under layers of official secrecy for 2 decades. And when it finally came to light, it raised a question that remains unanswered: what really crashed in the desert near Kingman, Arizona? When you think of Route 66, you probably picture vintage gas stations, retro diners, and that nostalgic spirit of the American dream. But on a particular stretch of this iconic highway, in the town of Kingman, Arizona, there's a story you won't find in traditional tourist guides. A story involving the United States government, secret nuclear tests, and what might be one of the most documented cases of unidentified technology recovery in modern history. This is not the Roswell case. It doesn't have the media attention. But it has something Roswell never had: a witness with a full name, a verifiable career, impeccable credentials, and the courage to sign a legal affidavit about what he saw. Today we're going to unravel the Kingman UFO case of 1953. An incident that remained classified for decades, involving technology that defies explanation, and which in 2024, more than 70 years later, still generates leaked documents from the Department of Defense. Because what happened in those 8 miles northeast of Kingman Airport may completely change what we think we know about what flies in our skies. To understand what happened in May 1953, we need to travel to the heart of the Cold War. The United States and the Soviet Union are in the midst of an arms race. The world lives under the shadow of the atomic bomb. And in the Nevada desert, just 65 miles from Las Vegas, the U.S. government is conducting one of the most intense operations in its history, Operation Upshot-Knothole. Between March and June of 1953, the Nevada test site detonated 11 nuclear bombs. 11. In less than 3 months. The sky over the Mojave Desert was repeatedly illuminated with mushroom clouds that could be seen from hundreds of kilometers away. On May 19, 1953, just 2 days before the Kingman incident, a test called Shot Harry was conducted. This detonation produced the heaviest off-site radioactive contamination of the entire series. The desert was saturated with military activity, scientists, engineers, and extreme security. And in the midst of all this, something else is flying through the skies of Arizona. On May 22, the Prescott Evening Courier, a local newspaper, published a headline that today seems prophetic: dramatized reading, "Flying Saucers Return to Prescott." The article documents the sighting of 8 disc-shaped objects seen by 3 witnesses, 20 miles north of Prescott, on the morning of May 21. Same day. Same region. Coincidence? Perhaps. But there are more witnesses. Many more. A local historian named Harry Drew collected testimonies from residents who that night saw something extraordinary in the sky: 8 unidentified objects involved in what they described as an aerial battle. Impossible maneuvers. Incomprehensible speeds. And then, 3 of those objects fell. One crashed into a mountain and burst into flames. Another landed intact somewhere in the desert. And the third one was buried 20 inches in the sand, 8 miles northeast of Kingman. His name was Arthur G. Stansel Jr., although for 20 years he used the pseudonym Fritz Werner to protect his identity. Born on November 6, 1924, in Dayton, Ohio, Arthur was not an eccentric schemer or an attention seeker. He was quite the opposite. During World War II, Stansel was a combat infantryman. He participated in the D-Day landings in Normandy. He was wounded in action 3 times. He survived the Battle of the Bulge. He received the Purple Heart 3 times. After the war, this decorated hero didn't rest on his laurels. He studied mathematics and physics at Miami University in Ohio, graduating in 1948. He then earned a master's degree in diesel engineering from North Carolina State University. In 1949 he was hired by the Air Materiel Command at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, yes, the same base associated with Roswell, as a mechanical engineer, testing military aircraft engines. This was a man of science. A man of service. An engineer with access to classified projects. And in May 1953, he was 28 years old and at the peak of his career. And then he received a phone call that would change his life forever. May 20, 1953. 10 p.m. Arthur Stansel is at home when the phone rings. It's his supervisor, a man named Dr. Ed Dahl. The conversation is brief. Cryptic. Arthur, you'll have a special assignment tomorrow. I can't give you details over the phone. Be prepared to travel early. Stansel was a military engineer. He was used to classified projects. But something about the tone of the call was different. That night, Stansel noted the conversation on his personal desk calendar. Decades later, that simple entry would become one of the few pieces of documentary evidence of the incident. May 21, 1953. Early morning. Stansel reports to Indian Springs Air Force Base, located within the Nevada test site. There he meets with approximately 39 other specialists, engineers, physicists, and senior military technicians. Nobody knows exactly why they're there. Nobody knows where they're going. They are put on a military plane and flown to Phoenix. Once in Phoenix, they are transferred to a bus. But this is not a normal bus. All the windows are completely blacked out. Think about that for a moment. 40 high-level military specialists, with classified security clearances, being transported in a vehicle where they deliberately cannot see where they are going. The journey lasts approximately 4 hours. 4 hours of darkness. 4 hours of silent speculation. What could be so secret that they can't even know the exact location? Finally, the bus stops. When the bus doors open, the Arizona desert sun hits their eyes. They are somewhere southeast of Kingman, surrounded by sand, scrubland, and distant mountains. And then they see it. An Air Force colonel is waiting for them. He gathers them together. His briefing is direct. Gentlemen, you are going to investigate the crash of a top-secret vehicle. Your specific expertise has been required to analyze different aspects of the object. You will conduct your assessments, document your findings, and do not discuss this with anyone. Understood? The specialists nod. They disperse according to their specific assignments. Stansel, as an expert engineer in propulsion and flight dynamics, has a clear task: to determine the approximate speed of the impact based on the analysis of the crash site. And then he approaches the object. The object is metallic. Not steel. Not conventional aluminum. Something Stansel describes as similar to brushed aluminum, but with a different quality. A surface that reflects light in a strange way. Shape, oval. Slightly flattened at the top and bottom. Dimensions, 30 feet in diameter. Approximately 14 feet high. To put that into perspective, think of an object the size of a small house. Large enough to hold several people. Heavy enough to leave a significant impression on the ground. And here's the extraordinary part: the object has penetrated 20 inches into the compacted desert sand, without showing any visible signs of structural damage. Let me repeat that. A metal object crashes with enough force to bury itself almost 2 feet deep in compacted desert soil, and its outer surface remains intact. No dents. No cracks. No visible deformation. Stansel, using his engineering knowledge and the characteristics of the impact, calculates that the object was traveling at approximately 1,200 miles per hour when it impacted. Show chart with calculations. For context, in 1953, the fastest airplane in the world was the Douglas D-558-2 Skyrocket, which had barely exceeded 1,200 miles per hour that same year. And that airplane wouldn't be able to survive such an impact. But what really captures Stansel's attention is a specific feature of the object. A hatch. Located on one side of the object, the hatch has been lowered and opened vertically, like a door. It measures approximately 3.5 feet high by 1.5 feet wide. Strangely precise dimensions for an entrance. Dimensions that don't correspond to standard human proportions. Too small for the average adult, unless the person using it was significantly smaller. Stansel can't get too close. His job is to analyze the impact, not the interior. Other specialists handle that. But from his position, he can partially see inside. The visible technology is unlike anything he has seen in all his years working with experimental military aircraft. The occupants. Not all the specialists saw the bodies. Assignments were strictly compartmentalized. But several did see them. And their descriptions are consistent. Between 2 and 4 entities. Humanoids. Approximately 4 feet tall. Heads proportionally large in relation to the body. Large eyes. Skin with a tone that witnesses describe as brown or grayish. They wore something described as metallic suits or silver uniforms. It is unclear whether it was clothing or part of their physiology. And according to most sources, they were dead. It's important to state this clearly: if these entities existed, if this happened, then we're talking about intelligent beings who died far from home. Whatever your position on this, it's a thought worth considering. Stansel wasn't one of the specialists assigned to examine the bodies directly. His job was the impact site, the speed, the physics of the crash. But others were there for biological analysis, for photography, for documentation. 40 specialists. 40 people with access to classified security. And of all of them, only one would eventually talk. The on-site investigation lasts several hours. Each specialist completes their specific assessment. They take measurements. Photographs, classified. Samples, classified. Comprehensive documentation, classified. When they finish, they load them back onto the bus. The windows are still darkened. But before the bus leaves, the colonel gets on one last time. He has a document. A document that each of them must sign. The Official Secrets Act. Gentlemen, the colonel says, what you have seen today is classified at the highest level of national security. You will not discuss this with your wives. You will not discuss it with your families. You will not discuss it among yourselves. Any violation of this order will result in severe consequences. Is that clear? One by one, 40 men sign the document. One by one, they accept to carry a secret that, for most, they will take to the grave. The bus returns to Phoenix. From Phoenix, they take a military plane back to Indian Springs. And from there, each specialist is sent back to their base, to their life, to their job. As if nothing had happened. Arthur Stansel returns to Wright-Patterson. He goes back to his job testing airplane engines. His life goes on. He gets married. He has children. His career progresses brilliantly. Eventually, he becomes principal engineer for the Apollo space program at Raytheon. He then spends 15 years as a program manager for Apollo software support at GTE Sylvania. Think about that. This man was part of the team that put humans on the moon. A true aerospace pioneer. And during all that time, for exactly 20 years, he didn't say a word about what he saw in the Arizona desert. Until finally, in 1973. He could no longer remain silent. April 23, 1973. The Middlesex News, a newspaper in Framingham, Massachusetts, published a peculiar article. Two UFO researchers, Jeff Young and Paul Chetham, interviewed a man who uses the pseudonym Fritz Werner. This man claims to have been part of a classified military operation in 1953 to investigate a crashed object of unknown origin near Kingman, Arizona. The story reaches the ears of Raymond E. Fowler, one of the most respected UFO researchers of the time. Massachusetts State Director for MUFON and a prominent member of NICAP, Fowler decides to investigate thoroughly. And this is where the story becomes truly fascinating from the point of view of investigative rigor. Fowler is not a blind believer. He is a meticulous investigator. A professional skeptic in the best sense of the word, someone who demands evidence. For months, he extensively interviews Fritz Werner. He looks for inconsistencies. He verifies details. He contacts organizations. And what he discovers is remarkable. First, verify the real identity of Fritz Werner, Arthur G. Stansel Jr. It's not a made-up name. He's a real man, with a verifiable military record and a documented career. Second, Fowler contacts the Atomic Energy Commission, AEC. The Stanford Research Institute. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Personnel from the former Project Blue Book, the Air Force's official UFO research. Several people within the military-industrial complex. None of these institutions confirm the incident. But neither do they directly deny it. The responses are consistently evasive. We have no information about that, we cannot comment on classified operations, that inquiry should be directed to. The organized silence that Fowler encounters is, in itself, intriguing. June 7, 1973. In the presence of Raymond Fowler, Arthur Stansel signs a legal affidavit. This is a legally binding document. Signing a false affidavit is perjury, a federal crime. And Stansel, a respected engineer with a promising career, signs the following. I, Fritz Werner, solemnly swear that during a special assignment with the U.S. Air Force, on May 21, 1953, I assisted in the investigation of an unknown object that crashed near Kingman, Arizona. The object was constructed of an unknown metal that resembled brushed aluminum. For a man in his position, working on sensitive aerospace programs, with a reputation to protect, this was an act of extraordinary courage. Or total madness. Or the absolute truth. Fowler doesn't stop at the affidavit. He compiles a 65-page report for NICAP, thoroughly documenting his investigation. Stansel provides you with additional evidence. His personal calendar from 1953. A simple desk calendar page. There, on the entry for May 20, in Stansel's handwriting, a note about the call from Dr. Dahl. In the May 21 entry, cryptic notes about being taken to Indian Springs Air Base for work I can neither write nor speak about. It is circumstantial evidence, yes. But it is contemporary evidence. Written in 1953, not decades later when he was trying to prove his story. This is crucial. Another investigator named William Moore decides to look for Dr. Ed Dahl, the supervisor who supposedly called Stansel. And he finds it. It only takes him 4 days. On October 9, 1981, Moore meets with Dr. Dahl. He asks him directly about the incident near Kingman. Dahl's response, I don't know anything about it. So, was Stansel lying about Dahl? Or is Dahl complying with the Official Secrets Act that he signed almost 30 years earlier? Or did Dahl really not know anything, and Stansel confused the details after 2 decades? This is the kind of ambiguity that makes this case so frustrating, and so fascinating. But Stansel is not the only one. In 1977, 4 years after Stansel's affidavit, a man who was in the National Guard at Wright-Patterson contacted investigator Len Stringfield. This man claims he witnessed a delivery from a crash site in Arizona in 1953. He describes 3 bodies packed in dry ice. 4 feet tall. Large heads. Brown skin. She never met Stansel. Her testimony is independent. The descriptions match. And there's more. The first report of a crash near Kingman was made to investigator Richard Hall in April 1964, 9 years before Stansel spoke publicly. A future Vietnam commander told him the story. Multiple sources. Multiple years. Consistent details. Coordination completed. Or multiple witnesses to a real event. The extraterrestrial hypothesis. So what's the case in favor of this actually being an extraterrestrial vehicle? Argument 1, the witness is exceptionally credible. Arthur Stansel is no ordinary witness. A decorated war veteran, he is an engineer with a master's degree and a verifiable career in high-level aerospace programs. His obituary, published in 2006, confirms every detail of his professional history. He didn't write books. He didn't go on the speaking tour. He didn't monetize his testimony. He simply signed an affidavit and went on with his life. Argument 2, multiple independent witnesses. As researcher Preston Dennett says, quote, "It's very rare to have multiple witnesses, multiple sources of information, confirming an incident like this. The accounts of Stringfield, 1977, Hall, 1964, and Stansel, 1973, come from completely independent sources. They were not acquainted with each other. The descriptions coincide." Argument 3, significant temporal context. The crash occurs in the midst of Operation Upshot-Knothole, 11 nuclear detonations in 3 months. If we assume extraterrestrial intelligence is monitoring Earth, what human activity would be more worrisome than a primitive civilization toying with weapons of mass extinction? There is a documented pattern of UFO sightings near nuclear facilities. Malmstrom Air Force Base, 1967, nuclear weapons performance in the Pacific, Oak Ridge. Argument 4, the newspaper of May 22. The day after the incident, the Prescott Evening Courier published sightings of 8 flying discs. Harry Drew collected testimonies from residents describing an aerial battle with 3 objects falling. Is it a coincidence that multiple civilian witnesses reported the same thing on the same night? Argument 5, unexplained technological features. A metallic object crashes at 1,200 miles per hour with no visible structural damage. In 1953, that was decades ahead of any known material. Even today, such an impact would destroy any conventional aircraft. Argument 6, the 2024 documents. In April 2024, Christopher Mellon, former Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence, publishes previously classified text messages. After requesting approval from the Department of Defense, received on March 1, 2024, Mellon reveals conversations where high-level officials discuss. "We are dealing with the recovered UAP that landed in Kingman, Arizona in the 1950s. We are gathering information. We also know that a highly classified memo from a Secretary of the Air Force is still in effect to maintain the cover-up regarding the UAPs." This is in 2024. 71 years later. The Department of Defense is still discussing Kingman. There are still classified documents. If nothing happened in Kingman, why is it still relevant 7 decades later? Skeptical explanations. Now, with the same intellectual honesty, let's examine the problems with the extraterrestrial hypothesis. Problem 1, lack of official confirmation. No government agency has ever confirmed the incident. The Air Force does not acknowledge it. The CIA does not acknowledge it. Project Blue Book has no record of it. Skeptics argue, if it involved 40 high-level military specialists, how can there not be a single official document in 70 years of FOIA requests? Problem 2, single witness identified. Of the supposed 40 specialists, only Stansel has publicly identified himself. Where are the other 39? Some probably died. Others may be keeping their oath of silence. But not a single other engineer has publicly confirmed being there. Problem 3, Dr. Dahl denies knowledge. When Moore locates Dr. Dahl, he claims to know nothing about the incident. That's problematic. Either Stansel is confused about who called him, or Dahl is lying for national security reasons, or it didn't happen. Problem 4, darkened windows. The fact that they couldn't see where they were going means Stansel can't independently verify that he went to Kingman. He went somewhere in the desert, about 4 hours from Phoenix. That could be many places. Problem 5, secret military project. At the height of the Cold War, the United States was developing classified experimental aircraft. The Lockheed U-2 was under secret development. Strange prototypes. Radical designs. Could it have been a project so classified that even the engineers assigned to study it didn't know its origin? They were told it was top secret, perhaps because it was, but American. Problem 6, inconsistencies in the descriptions. Different sources give different dimensions for the object. Some say 30 feet in diameter, others 12 feet. Some describe it as oval-shaped, others teardrop-shaped. The number of bodies varies, 2, 3, 4. These inconsistencies suggest that either the testimonies are unreliable, or we are mixing up multiple different incidents. Problem 7, False Memories. Stansel signed his affidavit 20 years after the event. 2 decades is a long time. Human memory is notoriously fallible, especially for stressful and confusing events. Could Stansel have confused or amplified a real but mundane event in his memory? The nuclear accident theory. There is a third possibility that few discuss but that deserves attention. What if something crashed, but it wasn't an alien or a conventional experimental aircraft? During Operation Upshot-Knothole, not only bombs were being tested, but also delivery systems, missiles, drones, primitive unmanned aerial vehicles. Shot-Harry test on May 19, 2 days earlier, produced the heaviest radioactive contamination of the entire series. What really happened in that test? The documents remain partially classified. Is it possible that an experimental drone, a guided missile, or some radioactively contaminated test vehicle crashed near Kingman, and that the recovery operation was handled with extreme secrecy to avoid public panic about nuclear contamination? This would explain the ultimate secret: the participation of military specialists. The windows are darkened to protect classified testing locations. The lack of official confirmation: nuclear projects remain classified longer than aeronautical projects. But it wouldn't explain the bodies. Unless the descriptions of small humanoids were test dummies used to measure radiation effects. This is speculation, but the military did indeed use dummies in tests of this kind. So, which theory best explains all the data? The honest answer is, none of them explain everything. The unresolved issues. There are aspects of this case that simply don't fit into any neat narrative. Point 1, where is the object now? According to researcher Preston Dennett, the craft was moved to a military facility, probably Area 51 or Wright-Patterson. But 70 years later, no worker at either of those bases has ever confirmed seeing any remains of the Kingman. Point 2, what happened to the other 2 ships? Harry Drew documented eyewitness accounts of 3 crashes that night. Stansel was only at 1. Where are the other 2 sites? Why has no one else spoken about them? Point 3, why did only Stansel speak? 40 people signed secrecy agreements. Only 1 talked. Were the other 39 extremely loyal? Were they more effectively intimidated? Or did they never exist? Point 4, the sightings of May 21. The Prescott Evening Courier published sightings of 8 objects. Residents reported an aerial battle. These are independent accounts from Stansel. If the whole case were fabricated, how do we explain these contemporary newspaper reports? The truth is that after 71 years, we still don't have definitive answers. What we do have are increasingly profound questions. If you visit Kingman, Arizona today, you'll find a town that has embraced its peculiar place in UFO history. The Mojave Museum of History and Arts, right on Route 66, has an entire section dedicated to the UFO crash. It features vintage newspaper clippings, artist sketches of the object, and redacted government documents that supposedly detail the crash. Tourists from all over the world stop there, combining nostalgia for Route 66 with curiosity about the unknown. It's American through and through, history, mystery, and a good diner for apple pie afterward. But for serious researchers, Kingman represents something more significant. Preston Dennett, who has investigated hundreds of UFO cases, places Kingman among the 5 most important UFO crashes of all time. It's not as famous as Roswell. It doesn't have the same cultural recognition. But it has something Roswell doesn't: a witness with a full name, a verifiable career, and a willingness to sign a legal document about what they saw. Think about the classic cases. Roswell, 1947, changing testimonies, no primary witness with convincing documentation. Rendlesham Forest, 1980, multiple military witnesses, but possible terrestrial explanations. Roswell, Brazil, 1996, anecdotal testimonies, little contemporary documentation. Kingman has witness with impeccable credentials. Signed legal affidavit. Contemporary personal documentation, the calendar. Multiple independent secondary witnesses. Newspaper reports from the next day. Verifiable historical context, nuclear testing. And now, in 2024, there's something more, implicit confirmation from current defense officials who still discuss the case as relevant. The persistent mystery. Christopher Mellon, the former intelligence officer who leaked the 2024 messages, commented, "It is extraordinary that 70 years later, this case still generates classified documents and high-level discussions. What really happened in those 8 miles northeast of Kingman? Was the crash of an alien spacecraft evidence of technology that challenges our understanding of the universe? Was it a military project so classified that it remains secret 70 years later? Was it a misunderstanding, a confusion, a mundane event amplified by time and imagination? Here's what we know for sure. Something happened on May 21, 1953. Someone called Arthur Stansel that night. Someone took him to the desert with 40 specialists. Something was waiting for them there. And whatever he saw, it was enough for a decorated war veteran, a respected engineer, a man with everything to lose, to decide that the world deserved to know." Kingman's story raises questions that go beyond the specific incident. If this was real, if extraterrestrial technology was indeed recovered in 1953, it means we've known we're not alone for over 70 years. It means the biggest news in human history has been deliberately hidden for generations. That has profound implications. About trust in government. About our place in the cosmos. About what other fundamental truths might be classified. But if it wasn't real, if it was a misunderstanding, a military project, or even an honest mistake, then that also tells us something important. It tells us that even intelligent, well-intentioned, credible people can be profoundly mistaken about what they experienced. Both conclusions are disturbing in their own way. Arthur Stansel died in 2006 at the age of 82. His obituary makes no mention of Kingman. It mentions his service in World War II, his contributions to the Apollo program, and his years of volunteering at the local hospital. He lived a good, meaningful, respectable life. And until his last day, he never retracted his testimony about what he saw in the Arizona desert. That doesn't prove he was right. But it proves that he believed it to be true. So, what do you think? Is Kingman evidence of extraterrestrial contact hidden for decades? Or is it a fascinating case of how military secrets, imperfect memories, and the human desire for mystery can create extraordinary narratives? Let me know in the comments. And be specific, what part of the case convinces you the most? What part seems weakest to you? If this video made you think, give it a like. If you want more in-depth, well-researched cases like this one, subscribe and turn on notifications. And if you know someone fascinated by the unknown, share this video. The best conversations begin when we share stories that challenge what we think we know. The Arizona desert holds many secrets. Route 66 has witnessed countless stories. But the story of what Arthur Stansel saw in May 1953. That story remains, after 7 decades, profoundly, irresolvably